Right to confront an accuser. I think we've all heard that phrase, and in criminal cases under the United States Constitution, we have a right to confront our accuser. We always think of that as somebody who is saying, hey, that guy hit me, that guy shot me, that guy did something to me. But does it always work that way? Well, that takes us to this week's case. Real case took place in New Mexico. And there were two brothers who we don't really know what was going on. They went up to the driver's side of a car. There were two people inside that car. Both brothers were shot. Brother number one was killed. Brother number two survived and testified that of the two men inside the car, it was the passenger that shot both these brothers as they were standing outside. So, case was brought against the passenger. And the criminal case went forward, and the brother came in and testified. But in addition to that, the state brought in a pathologist. This is somebody who is familiar with autopsies, familiar with forensics evidence, and is somebody that could testify regarding certain circumstances regarding the actual murder. And what the pathology testified to was that the autopsy and the autopsy report showed that the bullet which entered the decedent, which entered the dead guy, was shot from over 2 feet away. Therefore, it would have to be shot by the passenger, not the driver. The driver was at point-blank range. And as a result of that, it was through circumstantial evidence that we know it was the passenger who shot and killed one of these men. Well, at trial, the defendant's attorney objected and said, you can't bring in that evidence. Can't bring in that evidence because essentially what you, state pathologists, are doing is simply parroting what was said in the autopsy report. You didn't do the autopsy, but you're in here saying what the autopsy report says. We don't have an opportunity in this trial to cross-examine the person who did that report because that person's not here at trial. Therefore, it's that person who's outside the courtroom who wrote that report that is accusing the defendant. And because the defendant has a right to confront his accuser, we don't have the ability to let that information in because to do so would basically be somebody accusing this man who he can't confront. And that was the argument they made to the judge. That was the argument that was made to the judge. Judge considered this and said, you know, you're right. Because essentially what we have here is an autopsy report. It's hearsay evidence that essentially is being offered by another witness who simply read the report, and that's why it's hearsay. It's not evidence that's actually being submitted by the witness, and it's being submitted for the truth of the matter asserted, and therefore we find, one, that it's hearsay, and two, that it denies the defendant the right to confront an accuser. Well, it went up to the New Mexico Supreme Court. There, the New Mexico Supreme Court looked at this, and they said, you know what? You're right, Mr. Defense Attorney. You are right. And that evidence from the state pathologist does not come in to trial. Now, what could have been done is the prosecution could have called the person who actually did the autopsy and had that person come in and testify. But they chose not to do that. And because they chose not to do this, this evidence, which is hearsay evidence, stays outside and can't be used against the accused. Okay, so what do we learn? What do we learn from this case? Well, we learn a very important thing. We learn the way in which, in the real world, the right to confront an accuser really works. And in criminal cases, the Founding Fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, recognized that when somebody is accusing somebody of a criminal act, in this instance it was murder, that the person accused of that act has a right to look that person in the eye and ask them questions to see whether or not they are telling the truth so that an independent third party, a jury, can make a decision as to who is telling the truth, what's right, what's wrong, and what in fact did take place. An extraordinarily important right that belongs to all U.S. citizens. All right. We bring you this case as we bring you cases every week so you understand how the law works. I'm David Allen.